Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So today I'm going to have what's probably going to be the most exciting video for you guys this week, and it's only Tuesday, so much so that I was actually going to be talking about a Street Fighter 3 Third Strike PlayStation 2 decompilation at 4, but I made this video this afternoon because the fundamentally massive upgrades to Supermodel are going to be something everyone wants to know about. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But basically, for as long as I've had this channel, I have said how much I love Sega Model 3 games and how incredible of an emulator Supermodel 3 is. But basically, in every single installation I would talk about, we were using a third-party UI because the actual emulator in and of itself was command line only. As of today, like 3 hours ago, when this thing was actually updated on GitHub, it now has a built-in UI that's going to make this thing so much easier for everyone to use. Additionally, the builds are now going to be on GitHub for Windows as well as the other operating systems, and there's going to be a ton of improvements all around the emulation. This kind of feels like the biggest upgrade to Supermodel 3 in some years now, and I know considering everyone loves this emulator and always asks me how to use it, this is going to be a very big change for pretty much everyone. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, have you been using Supermodel 3 or been waiting for that UI? Because I know a lot of people don't like using emulation if it is command line only, but to defend, people always say in the comments that they don't know how to install the UI, and Supermodel 3 is one as well where people get kind of tripped up on even finding the UI. Now when you download the application and you double click the executable, you're going to have a full user interface, and I'm going to go over each and every step of it with you so you know exactly what all the settings are changing, because trust me, there's a ton of settings and you're going to want to know what each and every one does. Now when you open up the Supermodel executable file, you're not going to be met with some sort of command line anymore. You're actually going to have this UI. Just be aware that the games are organized in the actual year of release or other ways. It's not going to be alphabetical. Just kind of scroll down. It's not like there's that many Model 3 games, so you should be able to find absolutely everything you want, because every single Model 3 game that has a dump for it will run in the Supermodel emulator. You'll see here the PowerPC frequency is listed at 0. You can move it around. 0 I believe is just defaulting to what the actual INI file thinks should be good for every game, and you'll have all of your different inputs, including X input, which is what I use for steering wheels as well as for Xbox Series X controllers. You can adjust that as is. The first thing you want to do is dial in whatever resolution you want. This is going to be your own numbers. I just did 1080p, so 1920 by 1080, but you can crank this thing to 4K if you want to. You can launch it in full screen, or for my capture purposes, borderless window actually works better. You'll also see you're going to get some super sampling. I'll pop that at 2 just for fun, and then I also toggle the widescreen as well as the wide background options. This is going to give you 16 by 9. It's also going to improve the artwork, so it adheres to 16 by 9 on some of the actual borders. As far as the audio is concerned, you can leave that completely as is. I find no reason to change anything else in here. And of course, networking, since we're not doing a networking tutorial, I would leave that alone as well. Mist just basically has nothing in it that you're ever going to want to deal with. Now, force feedback is going to be an awesome menu, and you want to toggle that on if you're using a force feedback wheel or any sort of rumble as well, because trust me, using a wheel with Supermodel is going to be great for the games like Daytona USA 2, Scud Race, Dirt Devils, and everything else you could possibly think of. And as far as the sensitivity is concerned, you can change both the digital as well as the analog sensitivities and mouse dead zones for some of the games that will use that for light guns. If you're wondering what the key bindings are, they're all going to be listed for you here as well, not only by the button but also by the controls. You'll see here some are for fighting games, some are for racing games, some are even for stuff like Magical Truck Adventure. Those are all the options you're going to need to worry about. It is quite self-explanatory, but if you want a more in-depth tutorial, leave me a comment down below and maybe I'll make one for you guys next week. But when you want to load up a game, just make sure the ROMs are in the ROM folder and double click the title, and it will launch you directly into the game that you want to play. Now there are a few asterisks on that. Something like Daytona USA 2 needs some changes before it'll actually run, but I'll get to that later on in the video. But at 1920 by 1080 with every other setting taken care of, going widescreen and wide background, something like this just absolutely looks incredibly stunning. I didn't actually have a chance to calibrate my wheel for this new version, so I might be a little bit sloppy on this one race here, but also drifting in this game, just 10 out of 10 fun and wacky. And that is why I love Supermodel 3 so much. It brings you the entirety of the Sega Model 3 arcade board so much better than even the actual hardware, because you're not going to get this resolution out of the boards. You're not going to get get widescreen 16:9 support. So this is basically Supermodel 3 with all of these enhancements, taking Model 3 to a place we've never seen before. And now with these new updates, it's going to be even that much easier to use. There's going to be that much more improvements and that much more fun to be had. But at Soundtrack Sample one time, hear what Supermodel 3 is doing with the audio on Model 3, and I'll be right back with a ton more games and a ton more details of what's changed in this new version of Supermodel.
Your fighter.
I mean, the emulator definitely has a good quality of sound to it, but sometimes in Fighting Vipers 2 here, when you win a match, you can get a little bit of an exploding sound effect that will clip out the speakers. So this is still not completed emulation for Sega Model 3. Every single game works, every single game can be completed, but every once in a while you will notice a little bit of a bug. And like I always like to say, that is not a knock on the emulation whatsoever. I think Supermodel does an incredible job of emulating one of Sega's most complex 3D boards. The reality is it just isn't a 1.0 release, this is 0.3, so there is still some room to grow, and I'm sure that will happen, but otherwise everything here just works. There really isn't any latency in the controls that you would have any issues with whatsoever. All of the inputs are mapped intelligently to an arcade stick, to a controller, to whatever you plug in. If you want to just use the keyboard, you don't even need to actually add a controller. I definitely would recommend using something like that, because fighting games on a keyboard have never been something that worked for me. I know people love using big hitboxes, but I need that arcade stick or a nice D-pad as well as the face buttons. But that's one of those things. Supermodel gives you the ability to do whatever you want with these games, so you can kind of decide how you want to set them up yourself. Now, I'll leave a link in the description below to the GitHub page, and it's basically very bare bones as far as the information is concerned, but you're going to go over to the releases tab, and you're going to see 2 hours ago there was a build added, automated release with builds for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So you are going to be able to use this on Linux and Mac as well, and as far as what changed, the laundry list is absolutely epic here over on GitHub. You don't really need to worry about what changed, you just need to know that it got better. At the bottom of that page will be all of the different installations. Pick whichever one you want. Obviously for me, we're using Windows, but the great thing about this emulator is it isn't just Windows focused. You have the Linux build, you have the Mac build, so you're basically getting every major operating system. And as far as asking me about Android, everyone loves to do that. I have no idea if the emulator is coming over to Android and when that might happen. You want to ask the developers on that. Maybe they have plans for the future, maybe it's not in the cards whatsoever, but I know a decent amount of you love using Android for emulation, so I really have no clue on this one. But any sort of emulation platform that can handle something like Scud Race, a game hilariously enough I just talked about yesterday, has got to be one of the best things in my opinion. And that really is the reality of Supermodel. It is so incredibly good. You would think that this was a game that came out in like 2018 or 2019 with all the enhancements that Supermodel puts on it. Because trust me, if Scud Race had come out on Steam or something for like 20 bucks and it wasn't made by Sega but it was done 3-4 years ago, it would have absolutely still gotten the same incredible review scores as it did back in the day if it was running on Supermodel. It just looks absolutely gorgeous and beautiful in motion, and I can't stress enough, as I said yesterday on Imported Playlist Hall of Fame, how incredibly good this game is. Now, the one thing that will trip a few people up is if you're trying to run some of the racing games, including Daytona USA 2, you're going to see that sometimes it's going to fail and say that it can't communicate with the network board or other machines. It says network board not present. What you need to do is hit the actual button, and it is in the key binding menu, to get into the service and test menu. And then you actually have to change the machine assignments here, and just make sure you have to click on the actual window, or else the keyboard will go over to whatever other application you have open. So you go ahead and hit that 8, and you're going to go ahead and move over to game assignments. Just keep hitting the service button until you get there, and then hit the test switch. It'll give you the directions right at the bottom. You want to switch that over from master to single, and then go ahead and exit both menus. If you don't do this, the game will never boot because it's looking for a network board that does not exist. Switch it over to single, and you're going to see within like 10 seconds or so, you're going to be brought right into Daytona USA 2. And that is definitely something that trips a ton of people up, so I want to mention it in the video. But no matter what version of Supermodel you have installed right now, trust me, this new version is worth downloading and setting it up for. All you need to do is copy the ROMs from your old installation folder to the new ROMs folder in that new GitHub build, and you're off to the races. Pun incredibly much intended. But I definitely switched this video out because I want to talk about it today. It's one of my favorite emulators, and now it has a brand new user interface, a ton of new improvements, and just takes one of the best emulators ever made and just makes it that much better. And that's definitely something to celebrate as a Sega arcade fan. Short of that, we're done. The GitHub link's in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.